What you're about to see was never supposed to be public. I'm literally leaking a multi-million-dollar sales stream that's been restricted to our highest paying clients. This is the exact multi-threading system I used to close a $258,000 deal in just 6 weeks. It's what helped me hit number one in 12 different roles in my corporate career before I started my business training teams and reps to some of the fastest growing companies in the world. Look, most sales reps are taught to work one contact at a time. That's why 74% of deals die in no decision. Hell. But what I'm going to show you is how the top 1% of salespeople secretly engage 6 to 10 different stakeholders simultaneously to create buying consensus and close deals that others can't even get to the table. So if you're ready to 10x your close rate and never lose another deal to no decision again, let's dive into this leaked masterclass where I combine an entire course into one robust video that's about to change everything. Let's dive in. Hey, welcome to the section on multi-threading mastery. Now, this is a more advanced section because in these next several videos, we're going to cover the A to Z on how to prepare and from the very beginning of a sales cycle, before you meet this actual stakeholder, all the way through the end, what you actually need to do, the messaging, the plays, and things you can actually do that actually work. So if you haven't gone through the other parts of the course, I highly recommend you go to the other parts first, because I'll be referencing other key points that are from the other parts that make it far easier to actually multi-thread. So let's go and dive right in. So in this video today, we're going to cover the basics of multi-threading, which will cover, what is actually multi-threading, why is it actually important, why prospects don't want you to actually multi-thread, and also what are some key table stakes for trusted advisor and recommended resources. So let's go ahead and dive right in. So first off, if you're not sure what multi-threading is, let's talk about exactly what it is. So first off, this is when you engage multiple stakeholders in a deal to help drive a deal to a close. All right, now this can be from pre-discovery for our very first meeting, during the process, or even near the end of the cycle. Now, I'll tell you right now, the earlier, the better, because the earlier you do it, it just compresses your deal cycle. The later you do it, oftentimes you have to repeat a lot of the same steps, which adds more steps to the process. It can take it much longer to actually close. But on top of that, just remember, you don't get paid for having more meetings and more steps in the process. You get paid to close the deal. So ideally, the sooner, the better. Also, this is the opposite of what's called single threading, in which you're only engaging one stakeholder. So we'll use those terms continuously, multi-threading and single threading. So it's important for you to understand this. So let's talk about why this is so important. So first off, depending on where you get the sales stat, there are between 6 to 10 stakeholders in the average sales cycle. Think about that for a second. 6 to 10 different people in which each of them have their own opinions, facts, and feelings about why things need to be done. And when you think about this, think about even if you've ever gone on a trip with a friend. If you have a number of friends together and you try to decide where to go to dinner, just even that can be chaos, all right? Now imagine it's at a company you don't work at, people you don't know, and you're trying to get them to come together to make a decision. So it's critical to learn how to master the skill. On top of this, learning to multitask is really important because of the rise of omission bias. This is where buyers fear making the wrong choice more than missing out. And according to Challenger, they say 74% indecision comes from a fear of failure, and 40 to 60% deal loss to no decisions, so not competitive. So meaning people literally just stick with who they're using, even if it's a bad situation. So they feel inaction feels safer than action. So ultimately, when you engage in group consensus, this helps reduce their perceived risk. This is so vital to understand. And if you single thread deals, you are literally incurring the risk to having one or more stakeholders stalling or killing your opportunity. And I'll tell you right now, the majority of deals I have lost in my past, almost 2 decades now, even recently, it's because I didn't have enough of the right people involved in the deal. It's simple as that. I didn't have either the economic buyer, I didn't have enough technical buyers, I didn't have the right user buyers, I didn't have the right people inside the deal to actually move it forward. So this is so critical. Now, here's, as you can probably imagine, if you're meeting with your current stakeholder champion and you're trying to go around them or go above them or meet some of their peers, most of them are going to try to stop and block you. But it's important to understand why that's the case. So what's really important to understand is majority of the time they're afraid if they introduce you, you might make them look bad, which ultimately reflects on them, especially if they're looking to introduce you to maybe their boss or boss's boss or other high up execs, which can be very dangerous for them because they're scared of what's known as a CLM, a career limiting move, or a CEM, as a career limiting move, and a CEM, a career eliminating move, right? So this is why it's so critical that you have to show up as a trusted advisor from your initial outreach through the first meeting and on and on and on and on. And I want to give you a really simple example, right? Imagine, like having your friends or close friends meet someone you just went on a first date with versus someone you're in love with. Think about that contrast right there, right? That person you kind of want to date with for the first time, you're like a little bit like, I'm not sure I want them to meet my family, or what are they going to think about me, etc. Versus once you trust that other person you want to bring to your family, it's a very different situation. And I give you that simple example, right? But at the end of the day, your buyers are no different. Ultimately, if they're going to introduce you to someone internally, they want to feel good that they want to feel good that they have the stamp of approval on you to actually introduce them in. All right. On top of that, if let's just say, for example, if they say, yes, you're my person I'm going to work with, you're the solution I want to go, you're the company I want to go with, that's their stamp of approval. So if it goes sideways, that could actually impact them, how they're perceived, potentially their job, maybe you can get them fired as a result. So we want to help them reduce their risk. So this is a big mindset shift, but you want to think through, if we help them multi-thread, if we guide the process in there, it's a benefit to them because it helps reduce their perceived risk. So for example, just to really hammer this point home, like what's the risk level if a VP to go to the CFO for a big purchase, okay? Like let's say, for example, you're working one single champion, they want to make a big $250,000 investment. They love you, okay? They can go to CFO for a big purchase, right? There's some risks there. Versus if 5 of their other peers also want what you want as well, and all 6 of you together now, or all 6 of those people together now are going to the CFO and say, we want this thing done. So think about how much more power there is in making that deal happen, all right? So TLDR, it's far less risky for your champion if they're not alone on the change they're asking for. I'll repeat that again. You want to write this down. It's far less risky for a champion if they are not alone on the change they're asking for. So this is why it's your job to help them de-risk the deal and to teach them how to buy. All right. Now, let's talk through some key table stakes and recommend resources. So these are the tables you have to do. This is why I mentioned this is more advanced. You should have gone through the other modules already, but you should have done world-class thorough research already. And all things I mentioned, all things you want to prepare for, you want to have them all completely down before your first call. You should have also gone through some of the other main course sections, such as world-class prep, creating executive POVs, powerful discovery calls, advanced discovery and account mapping, right? If you're already doing some of the things already, you're already doing actually a lot of the heavy lifting that makes multi-threading far easier. But on top of that, you're establishing tons of trust and credibility that you're actually a person of value versus every other salesperson who's just trying to sling a product. So for instance, you might be watching this, say if you're an SMB and you don't have the multi-thread to the same level as someone in enterprise, if you already run the process that we teach in here, you're already elevating yourself far beyond everyone else, all right? And kudos to you if you're an SMB and you're watching this, because that means you're a rock star and you're thinking about how to even tighten your sales cycle up, because even SMB, there are multiple stakeholders too in some deals too. So here's a really easy action for what to do next, right? Because this is more so just an intro to multi-threading, but pull up your close-loss opportunity over the last 12 months. Go through there, count how many stakeholders you had engaged with that are 100% bought into your solution, all right? And which ones were missing. All right, so go through that now so you have an idea of who's missing, so you can potentially go back and save those too. All right, so we're going to cover understand the who's, levels of impact and influence, potential titles based on levels of impact and influence, how to determine who you need to multi-thread, and some core keynotes. So first off, let's dive into understand the who. So it's very easy to get caught into the titles of saying, okay, I need to meet with X CXO, I need to meet with VP of this, VP of that, director of this, director of that, and it can be very deceiving, right? Because what you don't want to do, it can be very deceiving because depending on the size of the organization, the organizational maturity, and what you sell, it can be very, very different. So for example here, like a VP of sales at a $10 million company may have more influence on organizational change than a VP of sales at a $10 billion company. And I'll give you a really simple example. So, when I worked for a couple of years ago, it was a company called Cintas Corporation, right? And at the time, they were, they're about $6 or $7 billion at the time, right? Now, they had 12 sales VPs in which they can make decisions regarding their organization. But let's just say, for example, if they want to change CRM, it wasn't any of them. It wasn't even the SVPs, all the way up to the C-suite that actually made it change, right? Think about this for a second. Changes the sales CRM was a C-level decision across the board, right? So kind of interesting, kind of think through, right? Now, it's only because there's also multiple divisions. It's a huge conglomerate, and that's why, right? Versus, a sales VP at $10 million company, they potentially could have the influence, even potentially the decision-making power, depending on how long in the company, to actually make a change to the whole CRM. So the maturity of the company, it definitely varies quite a bit in how they are set up. So that's why we want to think about levels of impact and influence. All right? Levels of impact and influence. I want you to think CDM. And let me show you exactly what that means. All right? So there's the company level impact and influence. Okay? These are what's called the economic buyers. All right? Now, if this sounds familiar, this is from the strategic selling section, or how strategic map your accounts to close section. Okay, there could be the department level impact influence, which are the technical buyers, and then there's the manager level or user level, which are basically user buyers and coaches. And each of them are asking themselves different things when they're engaging with someone like you to sell them something. So, for instance, at the very company level, this is the economic buyer. These are people. They can say no when everyone else says yes, and they can say yes when everyone else says no. On their mind, they're thinking, hey, does this help us reach our company goals, and or does this help us lower our risk? So this is very high-level organizational impact, okay? So if you go back to even the example I mentioned, at Cintas, they understood at the C level, changing our CRM could have a massive impact across the world that impacts literally billions of dollars in revenue and profit. They understood that. So that's why they didn't allow people, even at the SVP level, to make that change. Even at the SVP level, they had like hundreds of reps in their organization. It was wild, okay? So next we have the department level impact. These are the technical buyers. So they can't say yes to you, but they can say no to you. They typically are the ones evaluating it, right? And they make decisions that impact the whole department or division, all right? And ultimately, what they're asking themselves is, does this help my department with a specific metric that matters? Does this help my department with a specific metric that matters? All right, very, very important. And then below that is going to be the manager and potentially even user level, right? And these are the user buyers coaches. And they're asking, does this help my team or do our or my job easier, faster, or better? All right. Now, this is really important to understand, right? So like you can have, this is like the highest possible level, whole organization impact. This is like department level or division level. And then you have manager level, which is like, almost individually at that level impact. Okay. And if you think through, and this is back in some of the prior modules, the reality is most of the time when we're thinking through messaging or conversations, most average salespeople have their awesome solution and they're focusing on helping that lower level prospect solve their pain or problem and achieve the desired outcome, which ultimately leads to the highest level of close, loss, or ghosting. And generally speaking, that means they're primarily working with, the manager user level and maybe the department level. And they get stuck there because everything is kind of tied to this. And they struggle bridging into the overall company initiative. So if you've lost deals because the company says, or because your champion says something like, hey, this isn't a priority because my boss said so. Hey, our company is shifting priorities to something else, right? Hey, our CFO said we're going towards this instead. That tells you that you did not bridge it well enough to their overall company goals initiative, right? So if you go back to this chart here as a reminder, trusted advisors, on the other hand, has their awesome solution. They show direct linkage to low-level prospects. So they're showing, hey, manager, user level, here's how I can help you directly solve your problems, okay? And on top of that, hey, execs at the very top level, I can help you achieve your key objectives and reduce your risk, All right. As a reminder, this whole bridge right here, that bridges all the way through, it's in covered value through the whole sales process with multi-threading, and there's direct alignment, right, across the board. So this is a good refresher right here, but I want you to really let this picture sit in your mind, because this means when we're multi-threading, we want to make sure we're multi-threading at all of these levels every single time. And when we're single thread to a single one, even if it's just an economic buyer, it still puts our deal at risk. It's still very rare that an economic buyer will pull a trigger without moving forward with you, or without getting feedback from anybody else. And I'll give you a really simple example, right? So, I had a recent deal that we ended up closing with a pretty large organization, right? And this company, I had to work with basically their sales VP. So this is what they consider their economic buyer, all right? However, there was many people at the department level, from their enablement team and sales leaders, and even marketing, okay, and RevOps, that had to work through to get their buy-in, right? So I had one person here, I had like 4 or 5 people here, and like one person here, just to get the deal done, right? And it wasn't even that big of a deal. But I share that with you because not every deal is going to be the same, but we need to start thinking this way. When you book that meeting, who are the people at each level that need to make sure I start to engage? All right, so let's keep going, because I want to make sure we tie some tangible things to this. Now, we want to think through our potential titles, and I put in the note here. I want to really hammer this point home. Titles can drastically depend on the size of the organization, the organizational maturity, and what you sell. So, for instance, here, let's say if it's company level impact. Again, just as a quick reminder. Does this help us reach our company goals? Does it help us lower our risk? All right. So example titles, generally speaking, generally speaking, is CEO, CFO, CTO, CIO, etc. The C-suite. This could be the board directors. This could be VPs, actually. So that's why you have to be very careful, because VPs can also be department level depending on what you actually sell. Sometimes, depending on what you sell, it might not have a great organizational impact, right? So it's actually far easier to sell some of those easier things. Right, so that's just a reality situation. So, for example, here I had a buddy, and what he used to sell was actually like swag, like company swag, like polos like this, hats, etc. Right, so he can go to a big company actually, and primarily he'd go to someone high up in marketing actually. That was maybe like the CMO, right? And now he actually wasn't even CMO, he was even lower than that. It was like maybe the VP of marketing, maybe even the director of marketing, and he'd be able to close these pretty good sized deals, right? And he has some people below that as well, with more managers, etc. And some end users. Now is it, because what he sold, it wasn't a crazy impact, and they had more freedom because of the actual dollar amount. So again, this varies depending on what you sell as well. But what you want to think through is, okay, what's the overall level of impact and influence, and how will fit? So go back to the director level, go back to the department level impact and influence. Example titles are VPs and directors. Now, as a reminder, who's asking this question? Does this help my department specific metric that matters? That will help guide you to potentially who that title could be for what you sell. Or how about manager level or user level, right? And what's on my mind, does this help my team or I do our job easier, better, faster? Example titles are managers. Now, another key note is I put user level here because in some organizations, they're going to want to have like really influential like locker room leaders as part of the situation, or part of the buying process, get their feedback. Maybe they've been coming for a long time. Maybe they really trust them. Maybe it's a smaller company. There's a multitude of reasons why they may include an individual contributor as part of the process to ultimately gain buy, because perhaps they're using them to socialize with everybody else. So, for example, if you're implementing some sort of like cloud security, right? It's actually not uncommon that you might have some like IT managers or chief engineers who are very involved in the process to make sure things are actually going to fit their use case. Again, big part of understanding who you sell and what you're going after. So TLDR, how to determine who you need to multi-thread. Again, this depends on what you sell and how it impacts your organization, right? But a good way to kind of think through is like looking through your past deals that you've won, or what other reps on your team have won. They're bigger, and who are all the levels, right? Or who are the people at each of those levels, the CDM level, or who are the ones, what are the titles for each one? This will give you a guide to work toward. It's not perfect every time, but this gives you a hypothesis to work toward. So, for example, here, Like this is typically like I sell sales training, right? So company level impact, it's usually a CRO, generally speaking, right? Not always. It depends on the size of the organization, right? Department level impact, it could be the VP of S&B, commercial enterprise, emerging markets, right? And also a little typo there. Usually it stays within the department of sales. That's important to understand. So I'm kind of primarily staying within there, generally speaking. Not all, generally speaking, all right? The manager use level, it could be 2 or 3 rockstar managers and reps that they want to get their feedback on as well, okay? And then, for example, another example could be global HR platform. So let's say you work for like a company like Workday or something like that. The company level impact, could be the CFO and CHRO, so for super high level. Department level impact could be VP of HR, VP of Finance, VP of IT, VP of Biz Ops. And notice these really cross departments. And again, when you think about this, like, generally speaking, even if it's within the same department sales, most people are just not good at internal communication. When it's multiple departments that crosses over divisions, they're even worse at this. This is why multiple is so absolutely critical. All right, going to the manager user level impact, it could be HR director, finance director, IT director, business officer. This is just an example. There might be more than this, right? This is an example, right? So this is going to get your brain thinking in the right way in terms of like, who do we need to go after for every single op that's in my pipeline? All right, let me go through a couple keynotes and we're going to wrap this short video up. So first off, by doing this helps you identify in advance who the core stakeholders are. So meaning, if you, we'll talk about this more in a second, when you book a meeting outbound or inbound, there are steps you're going to want to take now to start multi-thread and start looping these stakeholders in to increase your win rate and help decrease the risk for the deal, okay? I want to remind you again, every single stakeholder is asking themselves with them, what's in it for me? Because remember, at the manager use level, they want certain things. At the department level, they want different things. And at the company, they want very, very different things. All right. So let's say, for example, let's just say if you sell a ticketing software for customer support tickets, right? You might be working with the customers, the CS manager, right? And they care about making sure they're able to reduce their turn time on tickets and they don't lose a single ticket, right? That might be their number one metric, right? Just like the turn time on tickets, right? It can vary depending on company, right? At the department level, they want to make sure maybe it's going to be their retention rate, of customers, right? And at the company level, they're probably potentially looking at, hey, what's our actually, net revenue retention, right? So they look at very different things because of what they're going after, which means your messaging must reflect that. So I want to really hammer this point home. Every time a message you write to people in your multi-thread has to reflect their key priorities, okay? So in the following sections here, I want to emphasize this point. You want to make sure to single thread your emails so you can adjust accordingly. So meaning, as you're meeting with different stakeholders and you're sending out recap emails, which we'll discuss more in detail, what to say, etc., the messaging must reflect that single person, all right? So imagine each person has their own love language. What's that love language look like? We'll get really tactical in a second, but I want you to start internalizing this now, getting that wavelength, that brain now, okay? Because remember, different roles equal different problem solve. And this sounds really familiar. This is exactly why, if you've been through the other sections of building out your ICP and also your executive POVs, that was a core part early on to have you identify all those core personas and how they really think from the psychographics to demographics, their core pains and problems, impacts their bit to each of them, their metrics to look at. That's what we did early on, because this helps make it far easier when you're deep in this more advanced section of actually multi-threading. So let's talk about what to actually do next. So next, here's what you want to do. So pull up your list of active opportunities. And for each one, just write out, bullet points, company level stakeholders, department level, and manage level, okay? And then go through these active deals and start looking through, like, hey, who are the missing stakeholders? All right. And a little side note, don't get happy ears if you're like, oh, cool, I got the company level stakeholder ready, but you're missing other potential department level, leaders, right? Or manager leaders as well, because ultimately this helps de-risk the deal by getting them all involved. We're going to cover the pre-discovery multi-threading strategies and messaging. And ultimately, what do you do before you have the very first call with them? So we'll talk about the inbound play, the outbound play, preparing for the call. So this will be very tactical. So let's go ahead and dive right in. So first off, let's talk about the inbound play. So let's just say, for example, that you get an inbound lead that comes in. It's awesome. Maybe it could be, they booked a demo, they booked a discovery call, but you have it on your calendar or they reach out to you, then you call them, book the meeting, something along those lines, right? Now, generally speaking, most inbound leads are not going to be the economic buyer. So as a quick reminder, the economic buyer is the only person who could say yes when everyone else says no, and they can say no when everyone else says yes. They have the highest level of influence, all right? And so again, it's very unlikely, especially if you're actually multi-threading and working large opportunities, it's the actual economic buyer, because usually they're very high up and they have way too much going on to actually sit and vet each vendor out. And now, more than likely, the person that reached out to you, they reached out to not just you, but also multiple other vendors as well, other competitors as well. It could be also the company they currently work with. They could have just Googled you. They could have looked on ChatGPT, found a bunch of other vendors. Could have been they found you from, maybe a referral from somebody else. Doesn't really matter. But ultimately, they're reached out to you. Okay, so here's what you're going to tactically do moving forward. So number one, you're going to research immediately. So just like you normally would prepare, so this is emphasis again, this is similar to before the world class, but you're just going to do the normal research as you normally would. But also, you want to build a hypothesis of who is most likely to be a potential stakeholder. All right. And we're going to go back to the same framework we discussed before, the 3 different levels, right? And, you're going to be looking at the company level, the department level, manager level. And ideally, you want to find at least 3 other stakeholders, okay, at the department level and above. And just to break it down as an example here, let's just say, for example, you for a company like Cloudera, right? Let's just say the person who reached out to you was the IT manager or the data engineering manager, as an example, all right? So some examples of department level could be, you might want to look up who the VP of IT is, the VP of data science, the VP of risk management, VP of DevOps, VP of finance. Those are some examples right there, okay? At the company level, that's, that could be the chief data officer, the CTO, the CIO as other examples. So you want to do your research and be like, all right, cool, here's at the very minimum, probably these 3 people I feel pretty good about who are probably going to influence the decision, okay? So you're going to find them immediately on LinkedIn, and you want to engage with their content. So you take a look at their content and also their comments. And you want to be really thoughtful. You want to add value, ideally on things that are under 2 weeks old. So this is really important because this will help you start to build, just a little bit of presence around with them as well to do it. Now, if they're not engaging, if they're not posting on LinkedIn, then don't worry about that, right? But this is an example of what you could do to start building a little bit of trust and rapport with them. So I want to show you a really, really simple example here. So here's an example from Stephanie Valenti. She's the VP of Sales over at Bill. So you take a look here. I dropped a comment here, and I didn't just say, oh, hey, I didn't just like it. I read through it, right? And then I drop a little bit of insight on top of this, right? In terms of, as you can see, this is like a pretty robust comment here. Like, just take a second to kind of read through this, right? Like, I didn't just reply whatever. I just took the time to actually thoughtfully respond back. And you can see she responded back pretty quickly as a result. So this is an example of a thoughtful comment to cut through the noise. All right, next. So after you do the thoughtful comment, right, and go ahead and send a LinkedIn connection request as well. Now, if you're able to, if they are posting content and you can reference the content, it's even better. So this way, ideally, let's say, for example, if it's the post that we just saw, I can just say, hey, Stephanie, love the post of the 3 types of buyers that you mentioned, how they shifted over time. Love to connect here. Something along those lines, right? Again, I'm referencing the post that she actually just did. So she's bridging different threads there to understand, oh, this guy is like, he's not just trying to spam me. He's actually taking a little time to be thoughtful, to stand out. So again, people underestimate how powerful this is, but this is another way to kind of stand out and break through the noise. All right. And then third, what you want to do is you want to pull their email, okay? Or you can also send them a note via LinkedIn if they've already accepted in time. You can send a video or an audio note, which is very powerful. Again, this cuts through the noise. You pull their email. You can send a note proactively to each stakeholder. Or at the very least, who's most likely to be the economic buyer as company level influence impact. Again, so I can't emphasize enough. But when you utilize like audio notes, which you just do on the phone, right? The phone app, the LinkedIn phone app, or you do a video message, it really cuts through the noise. So I want to show you another example right here, right? A little bit different use case, but the same type of principle, right? Because this is cold outreach, right? But you take a look here, like my first message to Felipe here is a video message, and this is May 6th, and then May 7th, you can see this guy, like, he literally was like, wow, I didn't notice these things. So you like and comment on the post for actually making an ask, thorough reach and personalization. It says it's a little busy right now, the new quarter and QBR, but maybe catch up in June. So you can kind of see, like, this is This is great. This is planting a seed for the future, right? So now we're actually engaging a little bit deeper, et cetera, right? I'm giving some value here, right? But you know, that's a different note there. But what I'm doing is I'm making sure I'm expanding past just a connection or liking the comments. I'm starting to build that bridge now, so there's more trust and rapport up front. Okay, so let's talk super tactically, all right, in terms of what would you actually say, whether it's via email or an audio note or the video message that you send you just via the app on LinkedIn, LinkedIn app. So the example can be very, very simple. So for example, here's an example number one. So subject line, it could be literally the name of the person that booked the meeting. It could be John Smith, you know, who booked the meeting, right? You go, you know, hey, their name. So hey, their name, you know, hey, Bob, if it's someone that's like maybe below them because you're reaching to higher level, you're reaching up to a department level, right? Maybe it's their their IT manager, you know Steve Smith, hey Bob, Steve Smith, your IT manager booked a meeting with me. I thought you'd like to join. Execs aren't usually involved at every step in the process, but some are curious to learn about whatever problem you solve, right? AI governance, data security, blah 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 blah, whatever. Okay. Any interest in joining? No worries if not. I can keep you in the loop as things progress. Your signature. Notice here. So you're just opening up the conversation to a future like engagement as well, even if they don't want to join. So this is like a really simple, easy way to do it. You can do this via email. You could do this via sending a note. So by the way, if you're pulling their email, that means you do have to have obviously the access to their data. So you have to use a tool like Zoom Info, Apollo, Seamless, something along those lines to be able to have access to the data. Maybe you have it already in your CRM. That'd be great, right? Or you can try to guess what it is potentially, based off the domain of the email currently of the person you booked a meeting with. Okay, now. On top of that, you can see this very, very simple. And you also can use the same messaging even via like a voice note or a video message, right? So that might sound something like this. Let's say, for example, you want to book a colleague, right? So maybe let's say the VP of IT book, and you want to see the VP data science can also join as well. That might sound something like hey Marcus, Bob, your colleague, over in data science booked a meeting with me, and I thought you'd like to join. Usually VPs in IT aren't involved in every step of the process, but some are curious to learn about X. And interest join, just let me know. I can send you an invite. No worries if not. I'll keep you in the loop as things progress. Now, I kind of riffed a little bit right there, but just kind of get my point there. You don't have to be verbatim like this when you're doing a video message or audio message. It's being raw and authentic, which makes it very, very powerful. So, and they have your signature. So that's example number one. Now, here's another example right here. Okay, this is a little more robust one, so you got to play it accordingly. I personally prefer number one, which is very simple and easy to use. But for some of you who want to be a little more robust, because maybe you're, you really want to, showcase you're actually doing research, maybe you're reaching a little higher up, which is totally fine. Subject lines keeping you looped in. Upcoming conversation with stakeholder name. So by the way, you can interchange these subject lines. I'm just giving you some different examples of how to do it, right? So hi their name. Wanted to give you a quick heads up. I got time booked with stakeholder name. From your team next week to discuss specific thing, AI governance, whatever. I'll be diving into strategic goals or lines. So this means, by the way, you have to have done research to be able to write this, right? Initial areas of opportunity based on what you've seen and heard. So maybe if you know some insight that you can drop here and how this could support broad initiatives. So again, you'd have to make sure you've done your research to be able to stand out. So if you saw the example of Felipe, I also did my homework there. That's why he said, okay, you also did your homework because I read their earnings transcript. I went through, I found key things. I built up a POV and I tied it to my messaging, which is, by the way, this is all stuff that is in other parts of the course part if you haven't seen, okay? And then I say, is there anything specific, like me touch under the conversation or avoid, feel free to drop me a note. We'll keep you posted with any relevant takeaways after the meeting. Appreciate time and trust, okay? So this is usually a little more ideal. Maybe it's like, before you want to actually meet with the, a C-level exec, you're just going to keep them looped in, but perhaps you want to do a little more of a true deep dive so you can have a really clear POV before you get to that next level to make sure it's of high value for them as well. So that's really simple. So two simple examples here. And by the way, these templates are also inside the black box as well as email messaging frameworks in the multi-threading frameworks, which we listed right here as well to make it very, very easy for you. Okay, let's keep diving into the next section. So let's talk about outbound, right? Now, chances are pretty good. If you book this meeting via outbound, you have probably already attempted to multi-thread array to book in multiple different levels, right? Now, if you want, depending on how much engagement you got in your interactions with them, right? You could, use very similar emails, But let's just say worst case scenario, if you had done multiple reach outs across the board, they're not opening any of your emails, they're not accepting your connection requests, they're not engaging, they're not available on LinkedIn, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, then you're probably better off realistically at that point where it's basically almost a dead zone. If you try to reach out again, then I'll probably just personally take a pause and just do my regular world-class prep. And I'm going to do my best now within the conversation, which we're going to talk about a little more, to multithread within the deal once I have a little more trust and rapport with the main stakeholder who already booked a meeting. All right. So next, let's talk about preparing for the call. So to prepare for the call, I really want to hammer the point home that you really must have executed the world-class prep you've already learned. Okay. This is from doing your research, creating executive level POV for your mid-market and enterprise account. This is so critical. Like just doing this is going to help set you apart to be able to position yourself to be able to multithread. Because remember, if you are showing up unprepared and you're just asking willy-nilly discovery questions, you're not showing up like you're an actual trusted advisor, this decreases your likelihood to be able to build a trust and credibility to be able to expand within the deal. Because again, you are considered risky for them to introduce you to anybody else. And we don't want that. We want to minimize it. We want to de-risk that situation so they trust you, so they're going to open the doors for you so you can meet everybody else. Okay. Now, for large opportunities, I highly recommend that you have filled out as much as you can the 7-figure blueprint tool. All right. So as a quick reminder, the 7-figure blueprint tool looks just like this, in which you're filling out the buying influences, the roles that are in, the mode that they're in, the personality type, the level of influence, champion, have you met with them or not? What are the direct wins? How bought in are they? What's the proof? And any other red flags. This helps you plan out your call strategy as you've seen in the other past videos. All right. And on top of that, this helps you really see the organization in a larger, bigger picture as well. On top of that, I also recommend on your call prep sheet that you're also listing out on there as well. So whatever you take notes on, right? So if you're using the sales call planning sheet, for example, you're using the powerful framework, then you should also have listed out, hey, who are these potential players right here, company level, department level, manager level? Because this way, in the conversation, which I'll show you some of the talk tracks, you're going to want to be able to list out other potential stakeholders as well. Right? Whether it's like, hey, so, typically, when we're looking to implement a large, scale project across an organization, usually we're also involving, people like X, Y, and Z. For instance, that means at your company, that would be Bob, your VP of, AI governance. That would be Tony, your VP of data science. That would be, Lisa, VP of InfoSec. Does that sound about right? Yeah. So you can see how powerful that can be when you're showing them that you've already start building that bridge with those people, and you know who those people are. So this is really, really powerful. So that's why having a tool like this is very powerful. So whether you use this sheet or if you have your own sheet, definitely have these already as pre-filled bullets to look up as a hypothesis is very, very critical. All right. So let's talk about what to do next. So what's next? First, this is going to be very tactical. Look at your current booked meetings on your calendar. All right. So just take a look. You pull your calendar up, your Google Calendar, your Outlook calendar, and see, okay, cool. Like, start looking up the people on those meetings and start setting a pre-discovery multi-threading emails to execs. These are all the inbound opportunities. All right. And you can immediately start prepping your meetings with the 2 tools I mentioned as well. And this way, literally, you can start multi-threading literally after this video. So go ahead. This video is going to end in a second. Stop the video and start doing these right now so you can start literally multi-threading your deals to increase your chances to win that deal. All right, we're going to cover first meeting multi-threading plays. So as a quick recap, this means you've done your homework, you've done all the research, you've done your initial first pre-multi-threading emails before the discovery call already, and you're going to have your very first meeting with whichever stakeholder you're at, whether they're at the company level or at the department level or manager level. All right, and we're going to break it down to very tactical plays on what you want to do on the call to do your best to open them up to be able to multi-thread the deal. All right, now, on top of this, I think it's really important. Depending who you book the meeting with, you will have very different goals and approaches. Now, I'm assuming, again, this is a complex sales process, meaning there are multiple stakeholders. It's a larger opportunity, generally mid-market and enterprise, right? And it's not a 1 or 2 call close. Now, again, if you're an SME watching this, in some situations, it's still going to be a complex sale, so you can still apply these same principles as well. So let's first talk about, let's just say, for example, you booked a meeting with the economic buyer. So this is company level impact, which means great job. These are usually harder to book meetings with, but they can give you the greatest impact in making the deal move forward. So let's talk about this. So let's assume it's a large organization, okay? So depending on the solution you sell, chances are pretty good they have zero idea about the nitty gritty about how things are done currently. All right, I'm saying it again. So depending on what you sell, when you go in the very high level, highest level at a big company, most of the time they have no idea about the nitty gritty. So for example, let's just say you work for Salesforce and you book a meeting with a C-level executive at Paychex. All right. If you're asking questions about what the current processes of the field sales team using their current CRM, they're gonna be like, I have no idea. If you're asking questions like, hey, so how do they currently update their CRM? Like, how do they currently use, the pipeline tools right now? They're gonna like, get out of here. They're gonna not care about the meeting, and you wasted their time, and you probably lost the opportunity. So you really have one goal here, which is you want to gain executive sponsorship. So I'm saying again, if you're meeting with the economic buyer, a large organization, your number one goal is to gain executive sponsorship. All right. You must build trust and credibility in showing them and teaching them something that'll help them reach their company goals and or reduce their risk. Remember, that's what they're asking themselves. Like, hey, how will this help me? How will this help me help our company achieve our company goals and reduce risk? And what's a personal win for me? What's the win for me, right? If you can do this in the first meeting, this will lead to them open the doors, if you will, to the rest of the organization so you can meet other stakeholders below the deal, okay, while keeping them apprised of the progress. So I'm going to say this again because this is so important. If you're not writing this down, you want to write this down because your goal is not to sell them your product there. You want to build trust and credibility, and you want to gain executive sponsorship. So they open the doors, all right, to say, hey, you know what? I understand this sounds like this might be something that can help me achieve my company goals, my personal goals, can help us reduce the risk. So I'm going to take you, I'm going to allow you to go into my organization and meet with other VPs and execs and just keep me apprised as that goes. That is what you ultimately want to get out of that, all right? So there's a few steps in how we do this. So number one, 3 steps really, world-class prep and research. I can't say it's enough because most people just don't do this. So you can't go in there asking basic level discovery questions, right? You are leading with insights and teach, which is something we covered in past sections as well. You want to guide the next steps with really strong messaging. So the first 2 we've already covered in other past stuff, but we're going to talk about the example messaging next. So let's go ahead and set the stage. So let's just assume here you've done a great job in the meeting. We have about 10 minutes before you wrap the meeting up because you're coming on the bottom of 30 minutes, whatever the time was set. This is what you want to insert phrasing like this. Now, it doesn't have to be exact to this. This is just to give you the framework of how we're going to guide the next steps. All right. So, hey John, it sounds you feel like you feel pretty good about pursuing this further. Can I make a recommendation on next to the most CTOs like to see? Okay. So you can see here, this is like really powerful. This is like, oh, okay, interesting. Most CTOs, there's a little bit of social proof intentionally. Okay, great. Hey, so after today, I'll send you a recap of what we discussed, and I'll CC your EA Elise so you can provide me the emails for stakeholder 1, 2, and 3, etc. So notice, you can only insert these if you have an understanding of how the organization works, and you made a hypothesis, and you share that with them, who potentially could be other players. I'll then meet with stakeholder 1, 2, and 3 and their teams to diagnose the current situation. I'm going to aim to get done in 3 weeks, depending on their schedule. Okay, so you just kind of land what you're going to do. After I gather the data, I'll put together an executive briefing for you and I to go over before going to next steps, whether it's a demo proof concept. Does that sound good to you? So here we're just making sure we're just getting, it's a little trial closer, just making sure that, that sounds really good, the overall process, all right? It's like a mini mutual action plan that you're kind of laying out verbally to gain the agreement on. Okay, great. Also, most CTOs like to be kept apprised of progress as it can help them achieve whatever goals they told you. What's the best cell number for you? I can text you updates in case it takes longer if I run into snags. So our goal here is we want to open up a texting conversation on another channel if you have not done that already. All right, so take a second here, like pause the video and like just internalize this, right? You can take a screenshot if you like, right? You don't have to be exact because obviously this is gonna shift. The middle is gonna shift a little bit depending on how the conversation goes. But I just want you to understand the framework, which is you're gonna ask, they're gaining agreement, it's going good. You want to make a recommendation, okay? And then you can say, hey, this is what we're gonna do next. I'm gonna keep you up to date with the brief, and let's see if we can get your cell number as well, basically, right? So I'll tell you right now, this whole messaging here will only be effective if you nail the meeting, okay? It'll only work if you've done a really good job in the meeting. If you've not done a good job, they're gonna be like, nah, I don't think so. I don't want you to talk to anybody. I'm not gonna give you my cell number. It's not gonna go anywhere. So it's only is effective if you nail the meeting. Okay. I mentioned already the SMS piece. Okay. So a little bonus tip as well. Once you get the cell number, literally text on spot to verify they got it. So a little like, okay, cool. They're dropping in the chat or they're telling you live, you just put it in there. Okay. Let me just text you, make sure you got it. Okay, because it just didn't like fat finger it, make a joke or something. Send a message. Hey, John, did you get the message? And just type in there something like, it's Marcus Venley. That's it. So this way they know it's your name. It's very, very clear, right? So they're like, yeah, got it, cool, got it. And you're like, cool, awesome. Now here's a extra little bonus tip. After you send the recap, by the way, your recap email should always be within 24 hours, if not sooner. I'm going to say it again because unfortunately I say it's happen far too often. I've been in deal cycles where people don't even send me a recap email. I think it's kind of wild. We cover so much they don't send a recap email. You should be sending recap emails after every single meeting to keep them apprised and keep the conversation going. All right. So you send the recap email within 24 hours, and then you just send them, send the recap, and they just fire off a quick text. Hey, John, just a heads up, send the recap email. Very powerful. Very, very powerful. Okay. Now, also on top of that, we'll talk about more, but as a mid-cycle multi-threading, strategy, you can now text them different updates. This is just to keep them in the loop. That's all it is, right? Obviously, do not abuse this for obvious reasons, but you can leverage this as a way to keep them apprised. Because remember, they get probably at least a couple hundred emails a day. I think back to even when I was a director of the Fortune 500, I got over 200 emails a day. I bet my boss probably got like 500 emails a day. I mean, it's just, and most of it's so much noise, right? But the text message, they get far less text messages, right? But on top of that, generally speaking, especially for a high up exec, they usually have an EA going through their email inbox anyways. You might get filtered out. But in text messages, most of the time, it's their own phone. So they're usually dealing with it directly, generally speaking, of course. So, all right, let's go to the next section. All right. So let's just say, for example, now, instead of maybe, if you didn't book an economic buyer, but you booked maybe a technical buyer or the manager department level, or maybe the individual level, right? So your goals are going to be a little bit different. Or I mean, there's obviously some similarities for sure, right? But you want to gain trust and credibility, but you also want to create a massive gap between the current state and the desired state. As a quick reminder, that means like that current state of pain, status quo, stagnation, and you uncover exactly where they are right now, and to what's their desired state, what's their wants, desires, their goals, initiatives, and we uncovered the opportunity cost and cost of inaction. All right. And again, ultimately, the bigger this is, the better it's going to be. So we want to create a massive gap, the biggest gap possible. So the way you think about this, just like before, you want to create 10x of value even in the discovery. So meaning, let's just say, for example, if you know your solution is going to be $1 million with that company potentially, then we need to find $10 million worth of a gap of a problem. When you find a $10 million opportunity cost of inaction, in that mean we don't find, hey, their current state to the desired outcome is valued at over $10 million because people are willing to pay $1 million to solve a $10 million problem. But if it's only a $2 million problem, a $4 million problem, it's far less likely they're willing to pay that money to solve that problem. All right. Now, in terms of the trust credibility, creating that gap, if you have executed well on the powerful framework and also the advanced discovery strategies in the prior parts of the program, chances are very, very high you achieve these goals, okay? And also I want to remind again, because a lot of this is all bridged together, like I mentioned in the first intro video of the section. When you ask questions like that dive into company level impact, this will help them realize that you are a business professional and not just another salesperson, okay? So when you ask questions like, hey, so, because of problem X, what are the ripple effects of this on the organization if you don't solve this in, say, 6 to 12 months? This helps them realize, oh, yeah, actually, that's a good point. I never thought about this, right? This helps them become a better business professional as well. It makes them realize, oh, maybe it's not just me. I might involve, maybe my VPs, my C-suite, et cetera, because I actually don't know that, right? So that's very, very powerful, right? So at that point, they may realize they need to involve other stakeholders, whether it's above them or their peers to get more socialization. All right. Now, another really, really key point I want to make sure we hit home here. When you're diving into the executive level influence part of the powerful framework, you want to use context to show you've done your homework. So for instance, an example is, hey, typically when a company's looking to implement X. When a company is looking to implement a CR migration, usually the CTO wants to be involved. That would be John Smith at your company. Is that right? So this is very powerful because since you've done your homework and you have on the sales call plan, you mentioned some of the prior sections, and you're mentioning these people, it makes them less likely to want to block you from meeting these other people because they're like, oh, this person, they already did their homework, right? So this can be very, very powerful. So this can help you show, that you already know who the players are, especially if they're trying to tell you that they're the only decision maker, which is very rarely the case. All right, so understand that. So again, back to your goals, you gain trust and credibility. You want to create the gap between the current and desired state, and you want to set next steps and open the door to multi-threading. Those are your core goals of the meeting. So from a strategy perspective, here's 3 steps to give you an idea. Now, I'll give you an example script as well, which you don't need to say is verbatim. This is giving you an example, but you can start off with a social proof story. Now, this works really well, especially if they're a little bit you sense a little more resistant to just opening the doors to you. Now, if your conversation is going really well and you're talking about these other stakeholders, like, yeah, for sure, we're going to want to involve those people too. Like, it's probably relatively easy for you to set really clear next steps of who you need to talk to and work them that way, right? But in some situations, they're not quite there yet. This next strategy is a very good play here. So you start with a social proof story, you make a recommendation, you gain agreement. So as an example here, let's just say, like, you have like 10 minutes before the meeting is ending. This is where you insert the section right here. So first you start with social proof. So, hey, John, before we talk about next steps, hey, you're in a situation where a lot about XYZ company was facing, which is they had a sub 20% team average win rate, a 12-month plus sales cycle, and a team missing by 50% in 3 years in a row. Within 6 months, we helped increase their win rate to 30%, cut their sales cycle basically down in half, and they hit 100% of the quarterly number. Can I share with you what we did exactly? So let's kind of break this down a little bit, right, from a framework perspective. So, hey, before we talk about next steps, you remind me of this company we worked with who had the problems just like yours. These were the problems 1, 2, and 3. But then this is the result they got. Can I tell you what we did? That's it. That's a very simple way to tell a story, all right? You're just listing out the problems that are probably very, very similar. And then you make a recommendation, right? Which is, and we're going to kind of list out what we did. Hey, so first we met with Lisa, their sales director, just like you. Okay, so we're doing peer-to-peer matching. This helps us get a lay of the land of the direct sales team. We then got Alice, our sales VP, involved to make sure we're helping drive towards core company initiatives. As part of the process, we spoke to a few of their colleagues, other sales directors, along with a handful more senior sales reps to help identify core constraints. This ultimately helped us build together a strong business case to present to Alice. I got approved quickly because she was involved early on. So before I go to the recommendation, let's kind of talk about this, right? So notice here, we're just talking about, like, who are the people that we engaged with in that past scenario that we closed, right? And what was the benefit? The benefit is this is the benefit. It helped make it easier to basically close sell to the right people, right? So here's what I recommend. So that makes sense. Then make a recommendation. Hey, so here's what I recommend. I'll follow back up with Tom, your sales VP, and I'll share some key insights from today's conversation. So notice because if you already had done that prior initial multi-thread email, it's far easier to do this now. I'll reach out to a few of your fellow sales directors like Sarah and Al to dive into the situation. After that, I recommend we do a group demo with Sarah and Al. I'd like to share my findings as a whole and how we can best support you to all that hit your number. That's it. That's it for a recommendation. And the agreement, does that sound good to you? Very, very simple. All right. So 3 steps: social proof, make a recommendation, gain agreement. And a few key notes, right? Obviously, you want to adjust the actual next steps based on what you covered in the first meeting. So I gave you an example right here, but depending on how it goes, you may have different steps because sometimes they want to see a demo first, beforehand, before they open the doors up. It varies. So we just want to make sure that you aren't just following verbatim. You're following the steps of the social proof, recommendation, agreement as the core steps. Okay, and this is not going to work every time. All right. Because sometimes, depending on how savvy of a buyer they are, they might have other ways that they recommend instead, and that's okay. So they say, hey, actually, this is what I recommend instead. No problem. Find out why. Can you help me understand, why you recommend that instead? Because sometimes it might involve other people. So, for instance, I remember, I sell sales training, but I remember literally, one of the deals that end up, closing, they wanted me to talk to HR, which is not a common persona we work with, right? But, because HR was working on this whole, overall program to basically, increase retention of employees, and employee development was part of her responsibility. It's just because of how the organization was set up. So that made a lot of sense. I'm like, okay. And because that HR manager was involved, it actually helped us close that deal too. So really powerful. All right, let's talk about what to do next. I want you to take these two frameworks, right? From the economic buyer type framework, that play, to the technical buyer or user coach, the department level one. And I want you to write your versions of it, just the base frameworks. That's it. Okay. And on top of that, you want to practice it. It should not sound like the first time you've ever said it. And it also has to be in your words. I just wrote these in my words, right? But these have to be in your own words. It can be less wordy than these examples here, but it should be simple, it should be concise, and it should sound natural as part of it. So write a few versions of the talk tracks and then practice it. This makes it far easier to gain agreement. Because if you don't sound confident offering them the next steps, they're far less likely to actually want to go along with it too, regardless if you've done a great job or not. All right, we're going to cover post-first meeting multi-threading plays. So just a quick recap. You've done all the core research. You had your very first discovery meeting at any level of stakeholders. The meeting is wrapped up, and you are going to make sure you're going to do some multi-threading right after the meeting ends. So let's go and dive right into exactly what we're going to do. We're going to cover 3 types of emails: the stakeholder recap email, the economic buyer multi-threading email recap, and the technical buyer multi-threading email recap. So first up, the stakeholder recap email. Very simple. So again, like I mentioned in the prior section, this should be an email you send within 24 hours. Within 24 hours. You want to be top of mind. All right. So for instance here, it's very, very simple. All right. Now, you can see here, this is an example right here. So subject line is going to be, your company and their company recap. You can change if you like. This just makes it very, very easy and top of mind. All right. Here's the body. All right. Hey, name. Great chatting earlier. Based on what discussed, here are next steps before our next meeting on date with other stakeholders. So obviously this might change a little bit depending on, who you're meeting with in the next meeting. Okay. Here are the action items. Okay. Boom. So very intentional here. This means before they even control the email, these are the core actions listed at the very, very top. All right. Here's a quick recap of what we discussed. There are X number of core challenges. Challenge 1, challenge 2, these can be bullet points if you like. These challenges lead to direct business impact. So notice here, we're directly linking the challenges at their level to the problems of the overall business. Here's what you said you need to solve: these challenges: capability 1, capability 2. Like you said, if you have these capabilities, you're likely to prevent challenge from happening. Anything I missed, name? Super powerful. Now again, this is generally designed for not necessarily the economic buyer, but someone below that, right? But I want you to treat it like an executive summary. So the more concise, the better. And obviously, if you don't have all these core components, you take out the components that you don't have, because this is a framework designed to help you. For example, maybe you don't even have capabilities yet, which is totally fine, but you have at least the core challenges and business impact. Great. Then just have that section and remove the other sections, okay? Also, this whole email right here can be tweaked and used as a great follow-up email after pretty much most meetings. So after every meeting you have with them, you always want to help recap with them. In fact, I use a variation of the same thing for even client meetings, because we're working on building something out together, like maybe like a GTM playbook, and there's always action items and next steps, and I do the same thing. And it helps keep everyone aligned and on the same page, all right? So also, if you're attaching any type of documents, you want to limit it, right? Or you want to use like a digital sales room, so it's a singular link that houses all parts of the process, which is very, very valuable. All right, so that's example email number 1. It's a very easy email to use. Let's just say, for example, how about actually back. So this is what you send directly to that person that you had a meeting with, okay? Then there's the economic buyer. So this is a person that maybe they weren't part of the meeting. Want to keep them in the loop about everything. So perhaps, let's say, for example, you send that pre-meeting first email, they didn't respond, which is totally fine. And now I want to keep them in the loop as part of the situation. You can either forward that original email, the one right above here, okay? It can be forward, or you could forward it, and then you could just, call it update, comma, whatever the deal focus is, that's going to tie to their initiatives, all right? So for example here, name, Bob, we're making good progress exploring whatever area. So what's a priority area? That's really, that's going to make sense to them. Surprisingly, this is what you uncovered. So you want to share some sort of insight that could be very interesting that they may not be aware of. Okay? So it got to be interesting. It's got to be non-obvious. For instance, like, for instance, let's say, for example, you're selling cybersecurity, right? I'm making a number up. I don't know the stats, but like, hey, surprisingly, there were 17 cyber attack attempts last month. 3 of them broke through and data was leaked. See how powerful that can be? Like, that's very risky for them, right? You can see, like, that's like, oh, I sell sales stream. Hey, surprisingly, there's approximately 4.2 million in pipeline lost just in last month alone, based off the current process of the sales org. That's very, like, that's like, oh, that's like, geez, that's very precise. Okay. And then you can, if you type of executive summary, you can have it right here, exec summary below, and that can be like this, hyperlinked. All right. Or if it's not linked, if it's a forwarded email, you can say exec summary below if you're forwarding this main email. Okay. We have whatever activity plans. This can be what's demo, a meeting, a deep dive, whatever it's going to be planned next week. It's something you want to weigh in on. No worries if not. I'll continue the emails, like, let's keep you up to date. So again, very simple. All right. And this is very, very useful. This can be, it can be a forwarded email, like I mentioned, of the above email, or it could be its own separate email with a hyperlinked document right here. It's a very high level executive summary. It's a very, very simple tool. All right. Next is the technical buyer multi-threading email recap. So, hi, first name. I connected with, whoever earlier on your team to review the current state of whatever area. Okay. And then you're listening to what's going to happen on the next call. Hey, we'll highlight the size of opportunity related to whatever, the specific focus area initiative or meeting on this date. We'll also quantify the potential impact of all the time. You're including on the date too. Thanks. We're just looping them in. This is very powerful if they were not part of that call. Okay. And you can do this for each stakeholder at a department level impact. Now, I want to emphasize, this is not a group email. So say, for example, mention some of the other VP titles, VP of InfoSec, VP of IT, VP of Data Science. You're not just taking this email, forwarding all 3, including them on there. You're going to want to take the core email and you're going to tweak it to have messaging fit for each person. So these are single threaded emails to each stakeholder, because this allows you to cater the messaging to fit their core priorities. So you can see why this is so critical that you've done the other exercises of mapping out your personas, the ICP, and what's most important for each one, each level, because this helps you adjust it to fit better to solve their biggest problem. Remember, when they get that email, they're asking with them, what's in it for me? So you want to make sure that these emails are single threaded and it works really, really well. Okay. Now, what you could do as well, to make it really simple, to make it a simple bridge, this is what I personally like to do, it's very easy, is I have this main core stakeholder email sent to the person I just met with. The other stakeholders then, I'll just take an email, forward it, and I'll adjust the messaging here to fit them. So this way, if they want to go down, because of the way my email is written, I'm able to list out like the current problems they're running into and tie to the biggest impacts to the business, right? But I can basically translate it in this core section here to make sure it fits them. So it's really, really powerful. Okay. These emails, by the way, are all listed inside the black box as well in the post-discovery email. So you can start utilizing literally ASAP right now. Okay, let's talk about what to do next. Very simple. Start using them, okay? I highly recommend you make these all a template so you can start literally using them after every single meeting to make sure you're threading in each stakeholder so they're kept apprised and they know what's going on too. We're going to cover mid to late cycle multi-threading plays. All right. And we're going to cover how to design a world-class buying experience. And we're going to break this connection into 2 different videos to make sure it's not super long. So first off, some of the situation. So it's now post-discovery, and you have not been able to get the economic buyer to engage or respond with you. Okay. So now, if they have engaged with you, the economic buyer, you'll keep engaging back and make sure that it's aligned with the process. So our goal here still in the mid to late cycle multi-threading plays is to get them to engage, keep them apprised of the progress, and keep all the stakeholders engaged in the deal moving forward. So I'm going to give you a number of different plays you can do. You won't want to do all of them, but these are just different ways to help guide through, because ultimately a sales process, as you know by now, is very rarely a linear progression. I do a step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and it's going to close every time for a complex deal. That's just not how it works. So I want to give you a number of different plays that can be very useful in how we just design an incredible world-class buying experience. So this way, it is actually a buyer-centric framework. So they want to do business with us. We're making it easy. We're reducing and eliminating their risk, and we're showing the highest potential upside as a result. So let's go ahead and dive right in. Okay, number 1, I can't hammer home this point enough, but execution, what you've already learned so far. So this is the entire process. So this is the A to Z from the discovery and running the whole deal from A to Z in the past videos outside the section here, right? So we're treating discovery as a process and not an event. So the mistake a lot of reps make is they say, okay, we had the discovery phase where I understand the core specifications, and now we're going to go into the demo and proof of concept, and then we'll do the same thing with each state. That's not how it works. Discovery is an ongoing thing. Discovery will keep going even after the deal is actually put in and installed. That's just the reality, right? Because and if you're in CS, you're going to also do discovery as well, continue to expand the account as well. So just have a mindset and be curious. Remember, ABC stands for always be curious. That's what you want to think, okay? So you want to execute the process the entire time. You also want to engage all stakeholders individually and in group settings as well. So in some situations, you can have like group discovery and group demos, and because of that, some of them are not going to want to open everything out and share everything on their mind. So you want to have separate side conversations, 15-minute chats, 30-minute conversations, different Zoom conversations separately with them to really care what's important for them. If you go back to even the 7-figure blueprint tool, we're going to uncover, core things, that's going to help them. But there also has to be, what are the direct wins? What are the direct wins for this individual buy info? So you want to uncover these things. And this helps them move it forward. Because remember, people buy with emotion and logic. You need both to move the deal forward. So really important. And again, just as a quick recap, when we're engaging with the prospects, remember, when we're sending emails after and we're multi-threading them, they're individual emails. We're single-threading those emails after. All right. So this way, we can cater the email to fit what's most important for them. So for example, at the economic buyer level, they're primarily going to care about the overall initiatives, what's most important for them, their company goals, reducing risk. At the department level, like we mentioned before, they have specific metrics we're trying to go after as well as most important for them, right? At the manager level, same thing, but at an individual level, it's kind of the same thing. So with each level, it's going to be very, very different what they're actually looking at and what's going to drive them to actually take action. Okay. Number 2, start building the business case up front. So this is very, very critical. All right. And if you haven't checked out the section where it's crafting 7-figure business case with Nate Nazarella, he does a phenomenal job walking through a really simple, easy to use 1-page business case, which should be a live document you guys are working together to build out to make sure we're engaging all the proper stakeholders as well, and we're building a business case to actually sell the deal. Okay. We also want to make sure we're leveraging your core champion to make sure the economic buyer is problem aware and the impacts. So this is really, really, really important. So oftentimes, if you think about whatever you sell, you're probably solving a problem at the manager and probably department level, generally speaking, that obviously can be linked to bigger core initiatives and the overall business, which is totally great. But a lot of times, the economic buyer may have no idea of what problems exist at the lower level. That's just a reality, and this applies to even small businesses too, right? Like, for instance, I'll give you a really, really simple example, right? So, we make a lot of YouTube videos, right? And which basically generates lots of leads for us, which is awesome for us, right? So I'll film content, send it to my team, and they take care of it, and boom, all I care about is it's a world-class product, product at the very end. Now, I have the Slack channel muted, but if I went to the Slack channel where they're editing the videos, they're running all types of problems with some of the videos. Like maybe there's a lag, maybe the lighting's a little bit off, etc. Right? And if I didn't go in there, I would have no idea these problems existed, right? So, what will happen is if they come to me and say, "Hey, Marcus, here's this big problem. We need you to go buy this new tool, buy this whatever." I'm like, "Whoa, hold on a second. Like, I didn't even know this was a problem." Okay, like, what have you done to solve it so far? Like, what can we do to solve this problem without any extra resources? That's always the first question we're going to try to find out, right? What else have we tried to do, right? What's the easiest way to do it? What's the best way to do it, right? What are the options now, right? So that's really important. Now, take it on a bigger scale. And, I was sitting in these conversations and, as an example, and it was interesting because, when I was a director in a Fortune 500 organization, I got the benefit of, being able to ride the corporate jet. And I'm in there with like C-suite execs of a Fortune 500. We're flying around, right? Like doing these visits and stuff. And and they invite other people as well. And it'd be interesting because they would have these other execs, other VPs on the plane as well. And because it's only like it was like I think it was an 8 or 10 seater plane. I could hear the conversations across the board, and I would sometimes hear like a VP trying to pitch some sort of like resources like they need like money to invest in like a $250,000 thing, and it's always interesting because they would go and they'd be like, hey, we need to invest like $250,000 to make this, to do this big thing for our region, and the CC would be like, what are you talking about? And they're like, why would he? Like, why is this the first time I'm hearing about this? Why are you wanting to even do this? And then like, oh well, this because we're like these problems here, like problem 1, 2, and 3, and the execs are like, okay, this is the first I'm hearing about this. What have you done so far? Can we solve this problem without any other resources? And obviously they use a different word, but you know my point. Like they're always like surprised because they know about the problem and the impacts. All right, and this happens all the time. And especially if it's cross departments where internal stakeholders are trying to get things done over, get like more funding and get whatever done over the line, but they don't get approved because a lot of time they just haven't done a good job illustrating the problem and the impact. All right. So we want to make sure, especially if the economic buyer is like completely detached and separate, depending on what we sell, and it's not engaging at all, we need to make sure our champion is proactively making sure that that economic buyer is aware of the problem, but not just aware of the actual impacts of the problem and how it impacts that economic buyer, the company initiative, and creates more risk. That's really critical because remember, you can't sell a solution unless that person is sold on the problem first. That's just the reality. All right. So this is really important. Okay. So we want to make sure they are completely sold, and that's why the business case is very, very critical. You also you want to help your champion uncover potential concerns and objections using the coach method. So if you haven't checked it out, make sure to check out the resource on how to use the coach method to close champions. This is a systematic step-by-step way. This gets your champion, your stakeholder, thinking through like, okay, here's the concerns potentially they're going to be running into, especially if they've never had gotten something approved internally before. So this is really important because if they know what to expect, it's far easier. It's kind of like this. If you know, like if you're actually do different analogies. Let's just say actually perfect analogy is sports. So elite sports teams will watch the game tapes, if you will, of the competitors, the teams that are crushing it. And they'll watch them over and over because they're identifying what are the core strengths of each player and where the plays are probably going to run. Because if they can identify the plays that team is going to run, then they can build plays around that and be ready for them. And that's essentially all you're doing. Now, obviously in competitive sports, that's why they're constantly creating new plays, right? But when you're selling internally, it's not as complex. There's almost always the same way they're going to always ask for certain things. So for example, I knew whenever I went to my VP and I wanted to request more funds for anything to get something done over the line, he would like grill me about like, okay, like what's the problem? What's the impact? What have you done so far? What are other things you tried so far? Have you done this? Have you done this? Have you done this? Have you done this? And early on, it would be like a punch of it. If it felt like I got in a boxing ring, he punched me like 19 times in the face, right? I'm like, oh, that was the worst. And I would not get approved. But once I started to learn his cadence, I'm like, okay, I know the cadence. I need to start warming him up first, right? So I would start seeding him. Hey, so I want to give you a quick heads up. Here's the big core problem. Here's the impacts to you and why this is important for all of us. I'm going to be working to solve this problem. I want to give you a heads up. You don't have to do anything. That's just me having a live conversation with him. He's like, okay, that makes a lot of sense, right? So that was seeding him with that, right? So then once I was ready to prepare that business case for him, I could say, hey, listen, like here's a big problem at hand. Here's the impacts of the business. If we don't do anything, here's how it's going to. Here's the bad thing that's going to happen at the very end. Here are all the things we tried. This, and this. Okay. So as a result, this is why I recommend. What do you think? So at that point, he's like, okay, this guy's got it. And if he's like, oh, what about this? What about that? I'm like, nope, we tried this, and here's why. We tried this. We tried this. We tried this. So I was ready. I covered all his objections, right? So this is powerful in that internal selling. Okay. So really important. Next bullet point is really the key. Ghostwrite an email to your champ that can use to gain buy-in. So I'm going to say this again. Ghostwrite an email that they can use to gain buy-in. Okay? And if you have early versions of the business case that you're working together, this can help sell the problem too. So again, we're helping you sell the problem. So for example here, and this is an example right here, okay? To the economic buyer, they can see the economic buyer's EA. They hopefully BCC you, okay, and any other internal stakeholders. And then the subject line is a problem area used in their internal language. So it has to be ideally in their language, right? So what are the big common words they're using consistently, right, of the problem area, okay? Exec name, been thinking heavily about executive priority. So notice here, we're originally got to executive priority. And there are some concerns on the horizon. How many worry about us hitting it? I have a few solutions I believe can help. Are you able to carve out 15 minutes for me to walk through this with you this week? Thanks. And then whoever you're talking to, your champion, their title. So this is like super simple, but this is an example of a ghost written email that you can write for them. So this way they can fill in the blanks, or you fill out for them. Even better, you fill out for them. So then this way they can take it and they can just use it. Okay? Make their job easier. But notice here, we're not writing an email to sell the solution. We're not using we need the problem to be sold. This is entirely focused on the problem. Right? Now, another example of this can be as simple as having the business case ready to go with the problem as well. And also saying send them as part of this too. This could be part of that too, you know. But you also have to make a judgment call depending on what's going on in the deal to be able to decide if you want to do that too. I wouldn't do it early. Ideally, a business case you're walking through live together. All right. Okay. Let's go to number 3. So here are a few other easy plays, or not let's say easy, but plays that really work. Go on site. So literally, like, meet your stakeholders on site at their location, because this can be wildly powerful. When you're meeting like customers on site at their location, you can build a lot of trust, and hopefully you can also engage with the economic buyer, even if it's a short conversation on a walkover or they pop in for 5 minutes. This is so powerful and so underutilized because this shows your best into deal. So imagine you're flying out to wherever they are, you're bringing a couple of your, sales engineers or whoever else you want to bring with you. You're bringing your exec team, and you're going out there having a deep dive. You're now meeting with their teams, and you're into the nitty gritty. You're walking into data rooms, whatever, depending on whatever you sell. Like, that builds a lot of trust. And remember, this is what consultants do actually. Consultants go on site and they do a full deep dive and provide the audit findings, right? And this is a variation of the same thing, but this builds a lot of trust because you're able to look them in the eye and have conversations because you're building trust and credibility the entire time to engage other people as well. Okay. On top of that, invite them to your headquarters, involve other execs. This is a highly underrated move. I think it's because a lot of people like to hide behind their screens, but I mean, I'll tell you right now, like, if I was able to influence the stakeholders, even if it wasn't an economic buyer, but I can get like at least everyone, at least, below the line, if you will, or even department level to that meeting, or to come to our location, and basically meet with our execs. I mean, my win rate was like 89% at that point. It was so high. And the reason was I would design a world-class experience. All right. So, like, for instance, here, let's just say if they're flying in, we're sending a nice car to go pick them up, right? Or it'd be our execs with their cars, and the sales leaders with their cars. We all had pretty nice cars, right? Completely clean. We had a whole protocol. We get the cars detailed, clean, inside and out, everything, bottle of water, ready to rock, right? Like, it was pre-planned. So they go, they pick up easy, it's fast. They have a custom sign at the airport. Some of they flew private. We're picking them to the private airport. Same thing. We're going in there. We got like bullet point topics to discuss even on the drive over. We pre-planned everything that was controlled, right, to get them from point A, the airport landing, whether it's a private landing, all the way to our headquarters. Once they got there, like, everything's preset. Now, I forgot to mention, before all this would happen, it was an orchestration of events. So, like, I'd sit down all the core stakeholders I wanted in part of the operation, or part of the basically the onset they're going to come, and we had the general manager, the ops CS manager, HR manager, sales execs, operational execs, had everyone in the meeting. I have the 7-figure blueprint tool prepared in advance, so they knew all the stakeholders are coming, what's most important, right? We had checklists of items that had to be done that would delegate out to make sure it got done properly. So for instance, like we made sure, like the cleaners came the day before to make sure everything was like spick and span, everything. I mean, we're talking from the bathrooms to the lunchroom to like the office to like literally everywhere was completely dialed. We literally actually got red carpet that we literally had rolled out right before they walk in the main entrance. So they literally walk in and they'd be like, boom, right? We had preset parking spots up front. So this way, once we pulled up, like it was designated spots that we'd park in, so those execs, those stakeholders are coming, could just easily go to the front door. We had preset the receptionist, so everyone knew they had to be dressed to the nines, right? Ready to rock, day one, okay? And they came in. We had pre-made name tags for everyone, for their name, their title set for them. We had a sign set for them. Welcome, welcome. All their names listed on there and their titles. Okay, remember, people love to see their names at all levels. Okay, they came and they could see that. They're like, wow. They could see the right cover. Like, whoa. Then we take them right to the conference room. They walk in the conference. It's obviously completely dialed. Right. We had our deck already up on there. Right. It'd just be right. If we were going to go through anything, the deck would be up. We'd have name placards ready to go for all the seating rates, so they knew exactly where to sit. Okay. Each person would have their own, if you provide a proposal or anything like, literature or anything, was customized for each person with their name on it, their logo ready to go. There had, water, coffee, drinks, food, snacks, like ready to rock. So literally they're coming in and it's an experience. They're like, whoa. And again, this takes coordination. It's almost like planning a wedding. But they would come and be like, whoa, this is pretty world class, right? So they come in, they're feeling good, they sit down, right? And we had preset agendas, right? And we ran just like a big sales presentation, right? But the difference was, like, depending on the goal of the thing, because sometimes it was just maybe they want to meet some of the other execs, they got to meet some of the other execs. And what was really critical was I would bring in other execs or other even department heads or even managers of different departments in which they're not salespeople, which is actually a beautiful part of the overall experience, because they would be able to share about some, how they can help in the back end. So let's say, for example, everyone's always worried about getting a bad bill of goods, and they worry about the support in the back end, right? So that was a big thing as well. So there was a, hey, listen, like I was, hey, listen, so, Tom and Lisa and John, you had mentioned what was really important to you is obviously going to be the support in the back end. So I've actually invited our CS manager, two of our CS reps as well. And this way they can share a little bit about their whole process on how they handle, support tickets, their responsiveness, and anything else that they can do as well. And then they would explain it, answer any question. And because, again, they're not salespeople. They don't have the gift of the gab. They're not, they were just not super smooth. It was amazing because there was so much rawness in their responses. And they just tell it as it is, especially with the ops people too. So, and then of course, if it was around lunchtime, we have catered lunch come in, right? Or if we knew if we have pre-catered lunch, or if we had special orders, we actually would get their orders as they sat down, or my EA would come in and get all their orders, and then this way they can get the orders taken care of. Lunch comes in at so and so time, right? And then we have lunch, etc. And then, it's amazing. We spend 2-3 hours together like this. You're breaking bread, you're just talking, and then you take them back to the airport or the hotel where they're going to go. It's amazing. Oh, I forgot to mention, we also give them gift bags. So then we give them some swag, like local swag that we thought might be useful for them. If there's anything we can customize for each of the bags for each person, if we could, we'd make some of the things custom as well for them. So for example, we knew they're big golfers, then we try to give them some golf swag as well. Stuff like that, just to really just grease the wheels a little bit. So highly underrated, but this allows you to create a whole different experience for them. What happens is when they leave that, what do you think they're talking about? They're talking about how awesome the experience was. And of course, then you can have single-threaded emails to each person, right? And you can have separate calls as well with each, different stakeholders after to really continue to move the deal forward. This is why, again, sales is not a linear process. This is an orchestration of events to make it a world-class experience. Okay, so that's the going on site. Okay, next ones are relatively simple. Kind of hammer them real quick. So number 4, engage with the economic buyer and other stakeholders on LinkedIn all throughout. So you want to be thoughtful and add value. So we saw in a prior video an example of what happens when you engage thoughtfully. Like it stands out. So you want to be intentional with that, right? This also keeps you top of mind on another channel. So outside of now emails, maybe text or calls, or video meetings and in person, it's just another way to engage with them as well. All right, and then you want to set reminders use every 2 weeks or so. Okay, so this way you remember to do this, and you can do it on your Google Calendar. You can do it in your reminders. You can do it in, if you have an outreach tool, like outreach, you can have it set in there. You can have it in your Salesforce, your HubSpot, your CRM as reminders for each stakeholder. But you want a way to do it, right? You can have it in your account lead list and Sales Navigator, so it shows up in your sales feed. My point is, you just need a system to be consistent with that. That's it. This helps keep you top of mind to be able to engage thoughtfully as part of it as well. Okay. You can make it very simple, or it could be, this is what I do is, I have a separate lead list of like deals in progress and all the stakeholders inside there. And once a week, I go to that list and I just see if they posted anything and I engage. That's all I do. It's very, very simple. So you just need to have a system to do it. That's it. All right. Okay. Number 5, you want to keep them updated throughout as the deal progresses. So this is really, really important, right? So what you don't want to do is have your initial stuff we talked about early on, and then you kind of like forget about them. You want to keep them looped in as you kind of go throughout. So I mentioned before, but you want to have single-threaded emails, so you're adjusting what's most important for them. So I can't hammer home that point enough, which is single-threaded messaging that fits to them. Again, set reminders every 2 weeks, kind of like what I mentioned, or so depending on your sales cycle. So the 6th thing we could do is exec matching. So this is offer them something that most execs appreciate, which is opening a network to other execs or hire, to have them expand their network. This is so powerful. This is actually why it's actually really great to get your execs involved early on in deals, because this way they can start building a rapport. They can help kind of guide, nurture them. And sometimes they'll be far more responsive if it's like C-level to C-level versus like, from an AE to C-level, right? Even if you're like a senior AE or an enterprise AE, it's like sometimes they just want to see like, okay, here's another C-level exec who gets my problems, reaching out. That's pretty powerful. Okay. Now, here's a really simple strategy, which is a ghost-written email that you can write an email for your internal exec that they can then send to them directly, that economic buyer. All right. So here's a very, very simple example. Okay. So, to economic buyer. Okay. CC your exec's EA. So say, for example, let's just say for this is the CFO. Maybe this is from your CFO, right? Okay, that'd be powerful, right? Or CTO, right? BCC, ideally you and any other internal stakeholders, and then update deal focus, whatever the focus is going to be. Okay, AI governance, whatever. I'm just picking an example up. Okay, body, exec name. So to the economic body they're writing to. Hey, our teams are working together on whatever priority area. Okay, very simple. Building a plan to hit exec level goal by this date. So again, notice the messaging is always tied to that level and what's most important for them. Okay. I was looking at the write-up and had a thought to run by you. And by the way, you could link the write-up here if you want to for them. It would be good to connect on share interest connection too. This is some sort of common bond. Okay. When works to catch up on this? This could be best practice. It could be really anything. Okay. So again, it's really powerful if it's like, for example, if it's like your CTO to their CTO, your CFO to their CFO. I mean, this is so powerful. All right. When works to catch up on this? I've CC'd my EA on this to help to coordinate. Just let me know sometimes. Thanks. Your exec name and their title. Very easy. You can write it up for them, right? And this is really, really powerful, right? So obviously, have a live conversation with your exec team before you just fire an email. Like, hey, send this off for me. Like, obviously, you want to build that trust and rapport with them. That's why I think ideally, the earlier on, the better, because you can have them write the, you can go straight email for them. I used to do a lot of things by execs. So I would even like have my execs like call, again, like, hey, can you call this like other exec? Can you call them, just leave them a message? And even just that is like, if they don't even answer, I mean, it's so powerful to be able to say, hey, this is so and so. Know you've been talking to my, so and so on my team. Our team's been working together on this. I'm the CFO over here, CTO over here. They're like, wow, they have a higher callback rate for sure than we're gonna have, right? As a result, so that's really powerful. Okay, So, number 7, gifting. So, custom gifts are really, really powerful way to cut through the noise. All right. So, as part of the process and all throughout, like whether it's sending, by the way, you can do it on Etsy, very easy. You can look, custom desk nameplates. I've done custom golf bags, golf balls. I've done holiday-based items, and some of you might be like, well, like, the main address is easy, but maybe they work from home, blah blah blah, whatever, right? You can get a subscription to white pages. I'm not endorsing them, but you can get, there's many subscriptions out there. You can get a subscription to basically find people's like email address or home addresses relatively easy especially in today's time. It's not that hard anymore. But anyways, send them custom stuff is just a really great way to cut through the noise, especially if you learn something useful or valuable about them that they love. That's a great way to cut through the noise. All right, great way to do it. Number 8, single thread your multi-thread. And say it again, single thread your multi-thread. So I mentioned this before, but the challenge in like group demos or discoveries is different departments have different, focuses and priorities. So for example, if you have discovery and you have like people from IT, data science, and finance on there, I mean, like these are completely different departments and they're going to have very different priorities and focuses. That's just reality, especially at different levels as well. So that means some people are going to be unwilling to speak up or admit that they're struggling. So if you're trying to do that, that can be very, very hard. Then that's not comfortable. So the strategy is actually very, very simple, which is just like we single thread emails to focus on priorities, do the same with meetings. So you could either group them by function or role, and or meet them individually so you can learn about their specific problems and challenges. So this helps you be able to fill that 7-figure blueprint tool I mentioned before to make it very, very easy. Okay, so let's talk about what to do next. Here's what you want to do. Take a look at all your notes so far and reflect. Okay, these are a lot of plays we covered. What I don't want you to do is just kind of like in one ear, out the other. Think through like, hey, how can I literally apply this literally right now to this? Right now to deal Y or Z, right? Look through your pipeline and be like, okay, what are some of these plays I can run literally right now to make this happen for my deals? Okay, so a quick state of the union, right? So at this point, you engage all the stakeholders, you have buying consensus, right? And you single-threaded all these people and you're multi-threading, et cetera, right? But here's the reality, especially if they are in different departments, majority of the time, they have really poor communication and they really need help guiding it forward. And one of the big benefits you can provide as a trusted advisor is really helping them helping be the quarterback to make it all happen together. All right. Now, a really simple way to do this is by using a very simple and visual mutual action plan. Now, if you heard of mutual action plan, most people when they hear about mutual action plan, they think of the Google sheet, Excel sheet, and it kind of looks something like this. This is my buddies, Armand and Nick. They put this together over a 30 Minutes Presence Club, right? So, walks through like the steps and stages, who's responsible for what, right? And there's resources, exec summary, stakeholders. This is a great tool, right? And this can be great, but this is also a lot to internalize, especially with busy stakeholders, right? And I found using something very simple works best. Now, I used to have to create my own, but I'm going to show you a very simple example, right? So, and by the way, when you're if you're in a large group meeting, like a Zoom call or meeting live, like when it's this is like overwhelming. So the simple, the better, because this helps open up the dialogue for just clear logistics. Okay, so a really simple example is one kind of like this. So look how let me make it a little bigger so you can see it. Okay, but you can see how simple and visual this is. Hey, hey, here's the actual go live date, very clear, so that they can start working backwards. Right before that point, what do we need to do? We need to do the onboarding on the 16th. Here's what we need to do on May 10th with the RevOps. Here's what we need to do finance and legal. At the same time, so it becomes really clear who needs to do what at a very high level. Now you can still have both, by the way. You can have a very granular plan like this, but when you're kind of discussing it as a group setting, this is a better way to visually show this data. All right, and big shout out to Kristen Connor. She actually showed me how these free templates I found, right? That she makes you kind of create this very easy. Before I was literally making my own, right? Or trying to get corporate marketing to do it for me. I'm like, this is great. There's already a template out there I can use very easily. And depending on when you watch this video, there's probably different ones that are even better than this. But this is an easy way to start doing ASAP. But now, when you're in that group meeting and you're walking through, hey, let's kind of work backwards, team. So we're going to have our go live date. Let's say you want to go live on May 21st, right? Before that, these are the steps we got to do. Is everyone on the same page? Does everyone feel good about that? Okay, cool. Here's what we're going to do next. So you can see how powerful that can be to take something very complex and make it very simple and very, very easy. And of course, this is something you can also build in the digital sales room as well. But you get my point. My point is more so is how can you utilize something to bridge the gap across the board to make it very, very easy. All right. So that's very, very simple to do. Okay. So here's what you want to do next. That's it for this video. We're going to just kind of tie it all together. Make a copy of this deck right here. So this deck right here, like I just made an example one on slide 2. This is from I think slides ago, and there's tons of different examples here that you can just take and make a copy of this deck just like this, and you just pick whatever one you want and start utilizing it ASAP for you might like this one. I mean, these are pretty cool actually. These are graphics. Anyways, pick ones you like to use and start using them moving forward. All right, and or create your own version if you want to. Okay, so at this point, you should have gone through all the multi-threading videos here, so you have a very good idea exactly what you need to do from the very upfront through all the way through to the very, very end. And I want to illustrate the point of multi-threading and how powerful it can be with a really simple example. This is a deal I closed. This is years ago. This company called TCMS. They're based in Portland, Oregon. Decent sized deal, about $258,000. It's a 5-year deal. And I want to give you a little kind of the sequence of events so you can understand just like how it's not always a linear process. So here's the first scenario. First off, very negative industry bias. Like they were like, they had gone through many vendors in the past, very unhappy with pretty much all of them, threw us all into the sea of sameness and very, very price conscious. So first off, I first booked a meeting with Jessica. This is their operations manager, she's a technical buyer, and I invited her to bring the CEO and CFO. Okay, I did my homework, right? I also sent an email to the CEO and CFO to invite them to join the meeting. Now, the day of the meeting showed up, okay? Jessica showed up, along with the CEO and CFO, and also 7 of their most respected general managers. Okay, this completely, like, threw me off, all right? I still ended up doing a high-level discovery and high-level demo. I'm like, okay, like, I'm like, at this stage, I need to, like, see if I can, like, try to get my highest leverage I knew was, like, an on-site, right? In my location, right? Which wasn't that far from their operation. So I said, hey, we're trying to set up an in-person meeting, and my HQ with my executive core internal stakeholders. And by the way, this was super intimidating for me because I'm like, it was just me. I'm like, oh man, like I just did not, I thought it'd be just like 3 of us. Not a big deal. But then all these other people, and these general managers, like they've been kind of like 20 plus years, kind of grumpy Gus's, like, I'm sure he's been the type just like complain about everything. I'm like, oh boy. Like this is not gonna be a fun conversation, but I did best I could. Anyways, I'm like, my best play here is probably to do it in person. So I drove to try to get them in person. So I sent also emails to each stakeholder separately and booked some short discovery calls for each person, right? I spoke to the general managers because it was really key. They were a key influence. That was a big deal. Like literally as part of the process, it became very aware. They had like I think like 30 general managers, but they really wanted to make sure that these GMs, especially these loud voiced ones, they could influence the other GMs. So they knew that the C-suite. So they needed to make sure these like locker room leaders or for sure bought it. All right, but they're user buyers at the end of the day. Okay, so I would then text nurture the technical buyer, mention secured a tour. Okay, she wanted the same group to come minus the CFO. I'm like, okay, that's totally fine. So I prepared all execs in the department of the 7-figure blueprint. So I got my ops GM, the CS manager, VP ops, VP of sales, and a bunch of other, a few other like lower level internal stakeholders part of it as well. And similar to before, I pre-planned every step. So if you watch this other section, I had a playbook for how I ran these these like in-person events or in-person like meetups at our location, right? So pre-plan every step, hit all the payment for each stakeholder. We execute on the plan. We provided, a proposal listing exactly how to help each person. We sent individual notes to each stakeholder after. After I called the technical buyer, after I get feedback as well. Overall went pretty well, but a couple of GMs are still really skeptical. But overall we're on board. So I set up a call to handle the financial terms and conditions with the CEO and CFO. Multiple meetings, but eventually agreed on terms. We still need the skeptical GMs to be on board. So we knew, like, hey, cool, like we got the T and C's dialed, the pricing was good, right? But we had a couple of blockers, okay, that we had to get on board. So then I set up a 2-week proof of concept with set huddles for each week while keeping the economic buyer and technical buyer apprised. The POC ended with getting their buy-in, and the deal closes within a week after for 30% above the competition 5-year term. Okay, this is a very non-linear process. That I mean, honestly, I listed out more linear, but it was literally just like all over the place, if you will. Right, that's how it felt. But I share this with you for a few key points. A buying process is rarely linear, and in this whole section here, we've talked about different strategies and plays on what you can do, but you'll have to adjust based on the situation that you're running into. But there are some common themes and core takeaways that I want you to take away from all these sections we've covered so far. So, which is, you want to start multi-threading before the deal starts. That is absolutely vital. This helps you. The earlier you can start, the better it can be. It increases your chance of being able to expand. Otherwise, your sales cycle will elongate, and you also risk the chance of it just getting stalled out, and you just wasted a bunch of time with people who are not really ready to make a move. Okay, you want to engage at all 3 levels. That's the company level, department level, and manager user level. It's really important, right? Because every deal can vary quite a bit depending on how many of each one, but you want to have an idea. You want a single thread engagement activity. Okay, so this way, when you reach out to them, you can focus on each person's core problems in there with them, especially with messaging, there's emails, calls, etc. Because there's a lot of little micro steps that can happen, and it's not always consistent. You want to be consistent and set reminders to help you. So you want to have a system for this, right? So whether you're using your outreach tool, you're using your CRM, you're using Google Tasks or your calendar, you just need to have a system. That's what matters. You have a system to make sure you're consistent with this. And ultimately, you just want to help them de-risk, okay, buying from you. You want to show them how to buy, and you want to make it really, really easy. And if you do this consistently, you'll be able to multiply more deals, which will actually increase your overall win rate. But on top of that, you'll see your deal size actually get bigger as well, because you're going to be able to sell more comprehensive packages for the opportunity. And if you don't get necessarily everything you're trying to sell them, it sets you up for better land and expand opportunities down the road as well. All right, so that's a complete multi-threading system that took me from struggling AE to a top 1% performer. This is the exact same training I usually reserve for our highest paying clients, but I want to share it with you because I believe every salesperson deserves to know how the top 1% really operate. Now, here's what I need you to do. Don't just watch this and do nothing. Pick one deal in your pipeline right now, just one, and implement the pre-discovery multi-threading strategy I showed you in the first 15 minutes. Send those stakeholder emails this week, individual ones. I guarantee you'll see a difference in how your prospects respond to you. And make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell, because I'm dropping more advanced sales systems like this every week. Systems that most sales trainers charge thousands of dollars for, I'm giving away completely free right here on YouTube. I've been in sales for almost 2 decades now, and I've seen too many good people struggle because they weren't taught real strategies that actually work. That's why I'm committed to sharing everything that I know. If you run a sales organization and you want us to come work with your teams to help them master skills to help drive deals to a close, head below to book a call with my team. And if you want to see 15 proven ways to move stalled deals forward, I'll see you in the next video right here.